Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, how stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree?
Welcome to Strange Things, broadcasting from the Arkanasa Radio Studios in Laredo, Texas. And welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. Tonight we're going to be talking about a little known legend, a thing called the Golem. In Jewish folklore, a golem is an animated anthropomorphic being magically created entirely from inanimate matter. The word was used to mean an amorphous, unformed material, usually out of stone or clay. This was a lot like what God did, making Adam from clay, only man was now meddling in God stuff. Another definition of golem is a giant handmade monster, usually enslaved to either a rabbi or a magician. Although golem are born to serve, a few of them have outgrown their masters and unleashed disaster on their native homes. The golem is not to be mistaken for Golem, a character in a movie The Lord of the Rings. The golem was a creation of Polish Kabbalists writing in around 1630 to 1650. The oldest stories of golems date to early Judaism. In the Talmud, Adam was initially created as a golem when his dust was kneaded into a shapeless husk. Like Adam, all golem are created from mud by either divine beings, such as God or some lesser spirit, or folks who understood these ancient writings. Unlike Adam, no anthropomorphic golem was fully human. A magician created a man. It was a golem, but it was unable to speak. It had no thoughts to utter. The rabbi sent the man to Rabbi Zerah. Rabbi Zerah spoke to the golem, believing it was a human. When the golem showed no signs of intelligence, Rabbi Zerah said, "You were created by a man and not by God. Therefore, you are dust." At that, the golem fell apart, returning to the ground he was formed from. During the Middle Ages, passages from the Sefer Yetzirah, or the Book of Creation, were studied as a means to create and animate a golem. This is kind of like the alchemists of Europe who sought to turn base metal into gold. It was believed that golem could be activated or brought to life by performing a ritual along with the use of various letters of the Hebrew alphabet, which formed a Shem, or one of the names of God. Judaism does not prohibit writing the name of God. It prohibits only erasing or defacing the name of God. That's why observant Jews avoid writing any name of God casually, because of the risk that the written name might later be defaced, obliterated, or destroyed accidentally, or by one who does not know better. If you do write the name of God down, you would then have to protect the item it was written on from then on. The Shem was written on a piece of paper and inserted into the mouth or the forehead of the golem. In some legends, the golem is inscribed on the forehead with Hebrew words. Once the words were inscribed, the golem would come to life. In order to deactivate it, you had to change the word from one meaning to another, kind of like changing it from life to death, only in Hebrew these words were spelled very similar. Rabbi Jacob ben Shalom, who traveled from Germany to Barcelona in 1325, remarked that the law of destruction is the reversal of the law of creation. Over the years, various magical and spiritual texts have described the golem creating process. All sources agree that the first part of the process is to build a giant humanoid creature out of clay. When it comes time to bring the creature to life, the instructions vary. Some sources say that the magician should dance around the creature, singing letters of the Hebrew alphabet and saying the secret name of God. When the magicians reach a state of elation from all that singing and dancing, the creature would spring to life. Once the creature had served its purpose, in order to stop it from becoming a problem or to destroy this type of golem, the magician would have to find its creature and keep it in one place while dancing around it again, only this time in the opposite direction, and sing the same incantations only backwards. In 1625, Joseph Delmedigo said that many of these legends were very prevalent in Germany at that time. The earliest known written account of how to create a golem can be found in Sadai Raziah by Eleazar ben Judah of Worms, 1165 to 1230. If you want to create your own golem, go look him up. The most famous golem narrative involves Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel. The name Ben means son. The story comes from the 16th century Prague in the Czech Republic. Throughout time, the Jews had been accused of everything from child sacrifice to trying to overthrow every government on earth. In the Czech Republic, the Jews were mostly living in one large neighborhood. The term used was a ghetto. A ghetto means a part of a city, especially a slum area, occupied by a minority group or groups, or put in or restricted to an isolated or segregated area or group. All of these discriminatory actions came about due to locals not trusting Jews because they were different. See, Jews have their own customs and language. Some dressed very differently from their neighbors. Anytime there is something going on that people find to be unknown or different, it leads to problems. People do not trust what they do not understand. Rudolph II, the Holy Roman Emperor, was big into mysticism, and he had quite a collection of alchemy and other magical books. The emperor had no problem with his Jewish subjects, but those below him did. So the lesser bureaucrats and government officials went about taking aggressive, violent action against the people of the Jewish ghetto. These were called pogroms, which were organized massacres in an effort to drive the Jews away or simply wipe them out. The Germans in the 1930s were not the first ones to try this. In 1540s, Rabbi Judah Loew ben Bezalel decided he was going to use his secret knowledge to stop the killing of his people. The rabbi collected enough mud from the Vltava River to create a massive creature. The rabbi molded the mud into a human-looking form, but a rather large human at that. He then used Kabbalah to animate the creature. A small scroll was made and words written in Hebrew. This scroll was then inserted into the golem's mouth. The golem was given a name. The rabbi called it Joseph, which is a common Jewish name. The creature was given the necessary power to carry out the tasks of protecting the citizens of Prague ghetto. Then Rabbi Lowe decided it wasn't enough, so he placed a magic necklace around the creature's neck, made from deerskin and decorated with mystic symbols. This would enhance the creature's strength and invulnerability. Once the golem was animated, it was sent out from the ghetto to kill anyone who wished to do harm to the inhabitants. The golem was not alive, so it couldn't be killed, and it was nearly invincible. The golem did look like a human. It was impossible to distinguish it from a normal man except for its inability to speak and its inordinate size. The golem was given some neat powers, which included the ability to turn invisible. Joseph could summon spirits of the dead to help vanquish an adversary. On a Saturday, only on Saturday, was Joseph switched off, as it were, by having the scroll removed from its mouth. A Saturday is a holy day in the Jewish faith. So each Friday night before midnight, Rabbi Lowe would pull the scroll out and place it somewhere safe, since it had written on it that was considered sacred. Then sometime Sunday morning, the scroll was put back in place, bringing the golem back to life. With the passage of time, the golem began to grow stronger. One story says as it got stronger, it also grew larger. Soon the rabbi was no longer able to control his monster. It went about town destroying anything it came to. As far as I could find, it never killed any of the inhabitants of the ghetto, but it did destroy a lot of buildings and things in it. It was created to seek revenge on those who had tried to harm the Jews, so it might have gone way beyond its programming. The rabbi finally had to destroy his creation. He managed to corner the golem and pulled the scroll from its mouth. Once deactivated, the golem was broken apart and the pieces were squirreled away in the attic of the synagogue, just in case he was ever needed again. The Golem of Chelm is another story about a rabbi creating a living being. The city of Chelm in eastern Poland was a hub of Jewish activity in the 16th century. During that time, Rabbi Elijah Baal Shem, Baal meaning Lord or Professor, was a famous leader in the Jewish community. The Chelm was the center of Jewish learning, like a university town. Rabbi Elijah was considered one of the wisest men in the city. Some of the writings about him say he could leave his body while in a trance-like state and drift about the countryside looking into all manners of things. He was also able to fly up to the heavens while not in his body. The rabbi was able to heal the sick using only his prayers. Thus, after many healing miracles, the people called him Baal Shem, meaning the master who healed with prayers. His name spread beyond the borders, becoming a living legend in the area around him. The rabbi took on a different image during one particular hot summer. The rabbi hid away in his attic, not coming out to visit his neighbors like he had been doing. He spent so much time in the attic, the people began to worry he might have lost his mind. Then one day the rabbi called for his assistants to walk to the nearest river and bring back buckets full of clay and water. When the assistants arrived with their loads, they were told to just leave everything by the door and then go away. Days passed without any indication of what was going on in the attic. Finally, the rabbi summoned his assistants once more. He proudly threw the door open and announced, "Here is the golem I have created." There in the attic stood a mound of clay. It had a slightly human shape, but it still looked more like a pile of mud, no matter what you called it. The rabbi led the mud creature out of the attic and down to the street. The people gathered in front of the house to marvel at this inhuman thing. It had a face, but the features were sharp and crude. Stuck to the forehead was a piece of parchment with the word Emet written on it. This means truth. The word was what brought the golem to life. The body was huge, with long, thick arms and massive legs. The folks in the street were afraid of this monstrous-looking thing. They began to hurry away. The rabbi told them to come back. There was nothing to fear. This thing was going to make their lives better, easier. It was going to do their chores so people would have more leisure time to do the things that they wanted to. It took some convincing, but soon the people of Chelm began to use the golem for their daily chores. Things like carrying water to the house or moving heavy loads from one place to another. The golem never needed to rest or eat, so it could work 24/7, making life so much easier on the humans. The golem, being man's creation, had no sense of right from wrong. It had no reasoning ability. When someone asked it to bring water to the house, the golem would walk back and forth carrying buckets full of water and dump them through a window. The floor was soon flooded. The golem did as he was told, working until somebody told him to stop. Any little task soon became a major problem. Any time the golem was given a task without a clear enough message, pull a wagon, the golem would pull it until the wheels fell off. Haul hay. The golem would drag all the hay into one huge pile, which would fall over, creating a mess. The last straw came one evening when the golem was told to go to the forest and cut some lumber. Folks needed wood for their fires, and it was too much work to cut down and drag all that firewood home, so they decided to let the golem do it. The next morning, the rabbi went looking for the golem, wanting it to do some other task. Walking from town, the rabbi discovered the entire forest around town had been cut down. The golem was still busy chopping wood for the town folks' fires. Well, the rabbi led the golem back home, trying to decide what to do about all the problems being caused by his work-saving wonder. Finally, the rabbi was forced to remove the piece of parchment, causing the golem to turn back into just a lump of clay. In the following centuries, many rabbis tried to create golem, hoping for a better result. But it was always the same outcome. The mindless body of clay, not being God's creation, only brought more distress than help. Most of the stories I found were told about rabbis or magicians long after they were dead. The folks would brag about how a particular rabbi or a particular magician was so great and powerful he could make a golem. Well, this next story was told by the rabbi himself. He claimed to have made a living creature from clay. In Vilna, Lithuania, it's called Vilnius today, lived Rabbi Elijah, better known as the Vilna Gaon. Gaon was a title that meant something like the Great or like a PhD today. He said he was the creator of the city's golem. Rabbi Elijah formed a man out of clay. He created a living being. As he was a scholar and possessed great knowledge, he knew the 5 books of Moses by heart and the secrets of the Kabbalah. The rabbi also knew the words to put on the piece of paper and attach to a golem's ear. See, no one is exactly sure where the magic words go. It might be the mouth or the forehead or the ear. It just depended on the particular golem or the particular magical readings. This golem was created in order to help his people provide fish for the Sabbath. Golem, I need you to go to the river and trap the fish in a net. Once out of the water, distribute the fish to the Jews. The rabbi had told his golem, and that's what it did. Any time it looked as if the local troublemakers might come calling during one of the Jewish celebrations, the golem would be sent out to keep things in order. If the few of the townspeople had to have their heads ripped off, well, they shouldn't have been there in the first place. If a mob were to descend on the Jews with bad intentions, the golem would walk into the crowd and smash on one or anything in his path. Arms, legs, heads, whatever was convenient. It got smashed. I can just picture the golem saying, "It's clobbering time." But that was the thing. A mob of rioters would soon become a pile of broken bodies, as the golem did exactly as he was told. No one said, "Go kill those people." He was told to defend the Jews, and that's what he did. Being tireless, the golem would stop the mob in its tracks, but then it would pursue the escapees, following them as far as the people could run. The golem was slow, but it never stopped. Once the rioters had run as far as they could, the golem would come shuffling along and continue smashing heads and taking lives. Well, the governor wanted to keep his townfolk alive. This is what governors are supposed to do, protect their citizens. So he called for the rabbi. I imagine the governor was probably rather polite in asking, since the rabbi did have the upper hand. The meeting went something like this: "Stop killing the local citizens," followed by, "Stop the local citizens from attacking us." The governor agreed to keep the locals on a short leash, and the rabbi agreed to dismantle the golem. The rabbi removed the piece of paper from the golem's ear, and the creature froze in place. The body fell apart and was removed. Now, the rabbi did keep the magical paper in a safe place in case the governor ever needed to be reminded of his promise. I'm going to take a brief pause right now, play a couple commercials, and we'll be right back after these words, so don't go away. You're listening to Arkanasa Radio. Makeup isn't something you want to just smear on and hope for the best. You might come out looking like Lon Chaney. Call Lourdes James, independent beauty consultant, and get a free makeover to see how makeup should be done. 956-723-3019. Back in 1776, someone said, "Give me coffee or give me death." And if that's how you feel, you should be at the Organic Man Coffee Trike. They make coffee the right way, one delicious cup at a time. 4501 McPherson, Suite number 9. Coffee, the stuff dreams are made of. The latest news coming from the Organic Man Coffee Trike is they will be staying open later into the evening from sometime in the short future, so their hours of operation should be from 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening for those of you looking for a great cup of coffee. Did you go out UFO hunting and couldn't focus on the sky? Swing on by Del Norte Optical, 107 Calle del Norte, right across from the Embassy Suites. Now, that's not a weather balloon, that's a flying saucer. Did you hear a bump in the night and you think it just might be a ghost? Contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society at Laredo Paranormal at hotmail.com. That's the LPRS for all your otherworldly needs.
No, don't say goodbye. Stay with us. This is Arcanasa Radio. Quédate con nosotros. Estás escuchando Arcanasa Radio.
And welcome back to the show. We were just talking about the Golem. Johann Conrad Dippel was born August 10th, 1673 in Germany. His family was living in a castle at the time. The castle just happened to belong to a man named Frankenstein. Johann went to college and studied theology, alchemy, and medicine, but he was always referred to as being from Frankenstein's castle. After college, Dippel went about trying to invent things like an elixir of life, a concoction that would grant the user immortality or at least a much longer life. Dippel went so far as to try exchanging the formula for what was known as Dippel's oil for the deed to Castle Frankenstein. The owner said no way. They didn't really believe that the drug would work. Dippel took up living at Castle Wittgenstein. His family had a lot of money. There he got busy conducting weird experiments trying to transport a soul from one body to another. He also was known for dissecting bodies late at night in his tower laboratory. Rumors spread as to where he got those bodies, but nobody was ever able to figure it out. Dippel would mix together just about any chemicals or substances he could get his hands on. He wanted to create a tonic that would make him live forever, or at least for a very long time. He was also trying to create life. Dippel wanted to take a dead man and reanimate him. This would have been just about the same thing as creating a golem. Things got a little bit messy one night in April 1734 when Dippel accidentally blew himself, along with a big chunk of the castle, into tiny bits. He will always be associated with Castle Frankenstein, as well as the name. In 1920, directors Carl Boyze and Paul Wagner made a movie called The Golem. Paul Wagner played the Golem, and Albert Steinruck played Rabbi Lowe. Lida Salmonovich played Miriam, the rabbi's daughter. They had to be creative to throw in a bit of romance. The Golem falls in love with the rabbi's daughter. It was a black and white movie, but worth watching. In the late 1700s, Luigi Galvani had been conducting scientific experiments on reanimating dead animals using electricity. His son, Aldini, decided to take this one step further. He wanted to reanimate a human. Living in Italy, this posed a problem. In Italy, criminals were beheaded, and this didn't fit into Aldini's plans. He wanted an intact body to work on, not one that's head had been removed from its body and all the blood had been lost on the ground. So Aldini moved to England, where people were hung instead of chopped up. Then Aldini had to wait for an execution and then beat old medical college to the morgue so he could claim the body. On January 17, 1803, George Foster was hanged in London for murdering his wife and child. At the time, medical students were only allowed to dissect criminals after execution. I already did a show about resurrectionists, so I won't go into that right now. Aldini managed to claim the body of the dead man as his own and drag it back to his home. to see if the body could come back to life. He hooked his wires up to the now dead George and fired up his batteries. The muscles twitched. Aldini thought he was making headway. He tried increasing the electricity. This caused the body to jerk and move around a bit. It looked as if Aldini just might be successful. Ah, but George was dead. Not just mostly dead, but really dead. No amount of electrical stimuli was going to get him back on his feet. When George refused to come back to life, Aldini blamed the lack of enough power and crappy electrical components. He decided to move back to Italy and try it again there later. The home he'd been conducting his scientific experiments in belonged to Anthony Carlyle. Carlyle would talk about the strange man from Italy who had been trying to bring a dead man back to life by zapping him with electricity. Mary Wollstonecraft was Carlyle's adopted daughter. She would later marry a man named Percy Shelley, thus becoming Mary Shelley, the woman that wrote the book Frankenstein. This sounds more like her inspiration for the book than a dream she had claimed as the reason. Or maybe she had nightmares from listening to her dad talking about Aldini. The best-known story of a golem is rarely thought of as being a golem. The story of Frankenstein, the modern-day Prometheus. For those who don't know, Prometheus was a titan who is credited with the creation of man by forming him from clay. After creating man, Prometheus defied the other gods by stealing fire and giving it to his human creation. This led to progress and civilization. Prometheus is known for his intelligence and for being a champion of mankind. Well, Zeus, the head of the gods, wasn't pleased with this, and so he punished Prometheus by tying him to a rock and sending an eagle down to eat his liver. Each night the liver would regrow, seeing as Prometheus was immortal. In ancient Greece, the liver was thought to be the seat of human emotions. Not the heart, the liver. Think how this would look on Valentine's Day. Instead of little heart-shaped candy, we'd all be handing out little livers. Prometheus was eventually freed by the hero Hercules. Mary Shelley linked Dr. Frankenstein to Prometheus. Think about it. A doctor... where'd my notes go? Think about it. A doctor using electricity, which in those days was very much like magic, turns a pile of sewn-together inanimate body parts into a man. The original story by Mary Shelley told of the creature being very good-looking. Victor Frankenstein sews together a bunch of leftover parts from various hospitals and morgues. The creature is brought to life by being zapped with lightning. Victor says his creation is beautiful. Ah, but being a dead body, things start to go bad. The man turns into a monster as his body decays, but it doesn't stop moving, kind of like a zombie. The story ends as Victor Frankenstein is following his creature out onto the ice of the Arctic Circle. Hollywood did a number on the creature. Originally, the director wanted Bela Lugosi to play the creature, but Bela didn't like the part. The creature had no lines, just grunts and groans. The creature in the book was able to speak. Hollywood wound up using William Henry Pratt to play the part of the creature. You know him better as Boris Karloff. What Dracula did for Bela Lugosi, Frankenstein did for Boris Karloff. The creature was, for all intents and purposes, a golem. The only thing missing was the magic piece of paper. Well, today, Scottish scientists are trying to create inorganic life. The scientists at Glasgow University are on a mission to create a form of life from inorganic molecules. The team, led by Professor Lee Cronin, has demonstrated a way of creating an inorganic cell in which internal membranes control the movements of energy and materials, just like a living cell. This sounds way too much like men meddling in God's affairs. There's a far easier way to create life, but it's not very scientific. The people keep trying to set themselves up as gods, not realizing there are a lot of dangerous things that might happen. No matter how careful they are, something will go wrong. That might be why the stories of the Golem always turned out bad. For some unexplainable reason, Jews are still being blamed for everything from the bad economy to world domination. There's even a publication or a manuscript called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. This text was claimed to have been written by a group of Jewish elders in the 19th century who were making plans to conquer the world. The claim was a meeting was held and plans were formulated, and now they were being carried out. In actuality, the entire document was manufactured by the Russian secret police in the early 1900s as a means of getting the Tsar to outlaw any and all Jewish activities and to get rid of the Jewish neighborhoods. This did lead to some violent attacks on Jewish neighborhoods. Henry Ford had 500,000 copies printed and distributed throughout the United States in 1920s. The Nazis sometimes used the protocols as propaganda against the Jews. The protocols were assigned reading by Jewish school teachers in the 30s when the Nazis took power. The entire fictional document was being taught as if it were true, despite having been exposed as fraudulent by the London Times in the 1921. The people were still being told it was true. Not only did it make a huge impact on the world of the 30s and 40s, it still has political influence in the present-day Arab and Muslim world. Henry Ford was the only United States citizen mentioned in Mein Kampf, which translates as My Struggles, which was written by Adolf Hitler. In the 30s, if you bought a Ford car, you would receive a free copy of Mein Kampf written in English. My dad used to have a copy that he found in an old box. He kept it as a memento or a reminder of how things were back then. Somehow the book got lost somewhere during a move or something. It might have been in a hurricane. I still hear people quoting the protocols as if they were real. Even today, after all this time, people still believe a made-up story. It is still widely available today and in numerous languages, in print and on the internet, and continues to be presented by some proponents as being a genuine document. A groundbreaking trial to see if it's possible to regenerate the brain of dead people has won approval from the Health Oversight Committee in India. Indian specialist Dr. Himanshu Banshal, working with two biotech companies, Revita Life Science and BioQuark Incorporated, has been granted ethical permission to recruit 20 patients who have been declared clinically dead from traumatic brain injury to test whether part of their central nervous system can be brought back to life. The scientists will use a combination of therapies which include injecting the brain with stem cells and a cocktail of peptides, as well as deploying lasers and nerve stimulation techniques, read electricity, which have been shown to bring patients out of comas. The trial participants will have been certified dead and only kept alive through life support. They will be monitored for several months using brain imaging equipment to look for signs of regeneration, particularly in the upper spinal cord, the lowest region of the brainstem, which controls independent breathing and heartbeat. The team believes that the brain stem cells may be able to erase the history and restart life again. Based on their surrounding tissue, the process seen in the animal kingdom in creatures like salamanders who can regrow entire limbs. I can see nothing but bad things coming from this one. The body will still be that of a dead person, but if the brain is wiped clean and replaced, this will be an adult body with a completely new brain, like putting a baby's brain in a fully grown body. Just think of the diapers. And once more, they're messing around with things they don't understand. What's next? Putting human brains inside of animals? Like, say, a gorilla with a human's intelligence? And there will have to be a whole new set of laws governing these reanimated folks. If a 20-year-old body with a 10-year-old brain decides to go drinking and driving, how do you stop him? The whole messing around trying to create life is just a bunch of scientists trying to play God. Remember what Jeff Goldblum, as Dr. Malcolm, said in Jurassic Park. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should. I did write a book based on the Golem legend. I had a weird experience back in 1989 or 90. I managed to talk to Art Bell about it one night on his show, Dark Matter. It was Halloween night. After the interview, I still had the incident inside my head. Well, my wife suggested I write it out as a book. Right. A whole thing would fill maybe 1 page. Who's going to read a 1-page book? Well, my wife said I had to fill it out. A lot. Make a story around the incident. So I sat down and I started writing. I wrote and I erased a lot of words. I pounded out a story, which took way too long. Then I had a hard time coming up with a name until I heard the song Ragman by John Isaac Waters. I liked the song, and as I was listening, my wife said, there's a good name for your book. So I called it Ragman. My book is a fictional account about a young boy who stumbles on a group of Satanists performing a ritual. Well, the boy grows up and he joins the sheriff's department. Then the bodies start to show up. This was the first book I ever wrote. Maybe not the best book ever, but I didn't have any experience at the time. You can find it at Amazon.com. Just a word of warning, this is not a kid's book. Lots of gore and lots of violence. After writing a few more books, I wanted to go back and rewrite Ragman and make it a better read, but everybody who had read it said, don't do it. Don't mess with the book. They liked it just the way it was. So I never did update my first book. If you're interested, check it out. Ragman by Chris James at Amazon.com. I hope you found tonight's show interesting and informative. If you did, let your friends know they should listen too. If you didn't like it, don't tell anybody. If you'd like to listen to the archives, you can find them at strangethings.podomatic.com, or you can listen on YouTube. But if you do go to YouTube, you have to type out the entire name, Strange Things with Chris James, or you'll wind up at that TV show. I had the name 2 months before the TV show came out, but oh well. If you'd like to let me hear from you, you can write to me at strangethings@arkanasa.com. Perhaps you have a story you'd like to hear on the air. Or if you have an exciting or unusual tale that you'd like mentioned on the radio, just let me know. If you don't want your name mentioned, you just simply have to say, don't tell anybody I said this, which I hear a lot. This has been Chris James for Strange Things. Did you hear a bump in the night and you think it just might be a ghost? Contact the Laredo Paranormal Research Society at laredoparanormal@hotmail.com. That's the LPRS for all your otherworldly needs.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man, the same murder three? Strange things that happen here, no stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.